Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Olivia, and we're diving headfirst into one of the internet's favorite pastimes, the parental judgment free-for-all. Now, if you're active on social media, particularly in the realms of family vloggers or reality TV stars, you likely saw the images. The pictures were, on the surface, the very picture of autumnal perfection. Liz Johnston, from the show Little Johnstons, shared photos of her adorable baby daughter, Leighton, nestled inside a large, hollowed-out pumpkin. It was a Halloween photo shoot. The baby, swaddled in a cute little outfit, looked like a tiny pumpkin sprite. The lighting was golden, the setting was rustic, and the internet, as it is wont to do, absolutely exploded. What was intended as a sweet, seasonal memory instantly became the epicenter of a raging firestorm. Comment sections transformed into digital town halls, with thousands of self-appointed safety inspectors issuing citations. Liz was accused of being negligent, reckless, and of putting her child in genuine danger. And just like that, a simple photo became a lightning rod for a massive debate on modern parenting, social media scrutiny, and the very nature of risk. So today, we're not just going to rehash the outrage. We're going to dissect it. We're going to look at it from every single angle. We're going to talk about the alleged risks, the counterarguments, the psychology of the online mob, and the immense pressure on parents in the digital age. This is about more than a pumpkin. It's a window into our culture. So, buckle up. Let's start by setting the scene in vivid detail. The photos in question typically featured baby Leighton, who is just a few months old, sitting snugly inside a giant, hollowed-out pumpkin. The top of the pumpkin was cut off, creating a wide opening. The inside flesh and seeds were scooped out, leaving a smooth, orange cavity. Leighton was propped up inside, often smiling or looking around curiously. She might have been wearing a cute hat or a little onesie. The pumpkin itself was usually placed on a blanket or a patch of grass, with perhaps some hay bales or fall leaves in the background. It was, aesthetically, a 10 out of 10. The kind of photo that, in a different era, would have gone into a family album with a handwritten date on the back and been shown to doting grandparents. But this is the digital era. And in the digital era, every image is public property, open for global critique. The comments began to pour in, and they were not about the color grading. They were frantic, angry, and fearful. The primary safety concerns raised by critics can be broadly categorized. Let's break them down one by one. First, and perhaps the most loudly voiced, was the risk of the pumpkin tipping over. Critics argued that even a seemingly stable pumpkin is a rounded object. A sudden movement from the baby, a slight shift in the ground, or even a gentle breeze could, in theory, cause the pumpkin to roll, potentially trapping the baby inside or causing an impact. The image of a giant gourd with a helpless infant inside it toppling over was a powerful and frightening one for many. The second major concern was regarding allergens and skin irritation. Pumpkin flesh, while not a common major allergen like peanuts, can still cause contact dermatitis or allergic reactions in some individuals, especially those with sensitive skin. A baby's skin is notoriously delicate, and the idea of prolonged direct contact with the slightly acidic, pulpy interior of a pumpkin had people worried about rashes, redness, and discomfort for little Leighton. Third, people pointed to the potential for unseen pests or mold. A pumpkin, after all, is an organic object that was once growing in a field. Even after being hollowed out and cleaned, could there be lingering bacteria, tiny insects, or spores of mold that could be harmful to an infant? The internet is full of horror stories, and the thought of a baby being placed into what is essentially a decomposing vegetable had many feeling squeamish and concerned. Fourth, there was the issue of temperature. The inside of a solid object like a pumpkin can be cooler than the ambient air, especially in the autumn. Critics wondered if the baby was getting cold sitting in that dampish, cool cavity, and whether that posed any risk to her core body temperature. And fifth, a more general but deeply felt concern, the sheer helplessness of the baby. The argument here was that regardless of the specific risks, placing an infant who cannot sit up fully on her own, cannot crawl, and cannot extricate herself from a situation into a confined space is an inherent failure to provide a controlled and secure environment. It's the principle of the thing, the vulnerability of the child versus the perceived carelessness of the parent. Now, these concerns did not exist in a vacuum. They were amplified by the culture of sharenting, parents sharing their children's lives online. There's a growing, and in many ways very valid, conversation about the ethics of creating a digital footprint for a child before they can consent. This incident was, for many, a perfect storm. It combined the sharenting debate with a visceral safety fear. The comments were a torrent. "This is so irresponsible. How could a parent think this is okay? My anxiety is through the roof looking at this. That baby is not a prop. Child Protective Services should be called." It was a chorus of condemnation, each voice layering on more certainty and more outrage. But then, as with any online storm, the tide began to turn, or at least, a powerful countercurrent emerged. A significant number of people rushed to Liz's defense, and their arguments were just as passionate and, in many cases, grounded in a different perspective on risk and reality. The defense's first and most powerful point was context. They argued that the critics were seeing a 15-second clip or a single, curated photo. They were not present for the entire photo shoot. What the photos didn't show, they insisted, was the army of safety precautions that were undoubtedly in place just outside the frame. Let's explore that context in detail. Imagine the scene outside the shot. It's highly probable that Liz, or her partner, or a grandparent, was positioned mere inches away from that pumpkin. Their hands were likely hovering just outside the frame, ready to catch the baby or stabilize the pumpkin at the slightest hint of a wobble. The photo was likely taken in a split second, the photographer saying "now" and capturing the image the moment the parent's hands moved out of view. In the world of professional and semi-professional photography, this is standard practice. The behind-the-scenes of a stunning, serene baby photo often involves a comical number of adults making silly faces, shaking toys, and having their hands poised for a lightning-fast intervention. The second point from the defense was about the pumpkin itself. A large, heavy pumpkin is not a lightweight beach ball. It has significant mass and a low center of gravity, especially when hollowed out and placed on a flat, stable surface. It's not nearly as tippy as the critics were imagining. Furthermore, a responsible parent would have taken steps to stabilize it, perhaps placing a small towel or a non-slip mat underneath to prevent any sliding. On the allergen front, defenders pointed out that this is where parental knowledge comes in. Liz, as Leighton's mother, would know her child's skin and health history. Has Leighton shown any sensitivity to foods or materials before? It's a safe assumption that a parent would know. For a baby without known sensitivities, a brief contact with pumpkin flesh is extremely low risk. Millions of children squish pumpkin guts between their fingers every Halloween without dire consequences. This was framed as an overblown, almost hysterical concern. Regarding pests and mold, the defense argued this was a classic case of germophobia gone too far. A pumpkin purchased from a reputable source, thoroughly washed and dried on the inside, presents a microbial risk that is arguably lower than the shopping cart seat at the grocery store, or the floor of a restaurant, or any number of surfaces that babies encounter in daily life. Life is not a sterile environment, and a certain level of exposure is normal and even necessary for building a healthy immune system. As for temperature, the shoot was likely brief, and the baby was undoubtedly monitored for comfort. Was she fussing? Was her skin cool to the touch? These are things a present, attentive parent would be hyper-aware of. But the defense went beyond just refuting the specific safety points. They launched a counteroffensive on the culture of judgment itself. They accused the online critics of performative safety, of loudly proclaiming their own superior parenting skills not to actually help a child, but to gain social currency and moral superiority within their online tribes. This is a crucial point, so let's dwell on it. The psychology of the online commenter is complex. When a person writes, "This is so dangerous. I would never do this with my child," what are they really saying? On one level, they're expressing a genuine concern. But on another, deeper level, they're making a public declaration of their own parental virtue. They're drawing a line in the sand. I am on the safe side of this line, and you are on the dangerous side. It's a way of affirming one's own identity as a good parent by contrasting it with a bad parent in the spotlight. This dynamic creates a runaway train of outrage. The first comment expresses concern. The second comment, wanting to be seen as equally caring, must amplify that concern slightly. The third comment amplifies it further, perhaps introducing a new, hypothetical danger. By the 100th comment, people are talking about calling CPS for a photoshoot that lasted 3 minutes. The context collapses, and the image is judged not as a moment in time, but as a representation of the parent's entire philosophy and capability. This leads us to the immense pressure on parents, and especially mothers, in the age of social media. There is an impossible standard of perfection to which they are held. They're expected to create magical, Pinterest-worthy experiences for their children, to document them beautifully, and to share them with the world. But the moment they do, that same world descends to pick apart every single detail. If the background is messy, she's slovenly. If it's too perfect, she's neglecting her child for aesthetics. If she shares a photo of a home-cooked, organic meal, she's setting an unrealistic standard for other moms. If she shares a photo of her kid eating a chicken nugget, she's poisoning her child. It's a classic double bind. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Liz Johnston, in this case, was trying to create a beautiful, seasonal memory. She was participating in a long tradition of quirky baby photos. Many of us have old photos of ourselves as babies in a Christmas stocking, a laundry basket, or a watermelon. Our parents thought it was cute and funny. There was no global audience to condemn them. The risk assessment was private between them and their own common sense. This incident forces us to ask, have we, as a society, lost our collective common sense? Have we become so risk-averse, so fearful of every hypothetical worst-case scenario, that we've pathologized normal, playful parenting? There's a term for this: helicopter parenting on a societal scale. We are all hovering over each other, ready to swoop in with a correction, a warning, or a condemnation. Let's also talk about the platform itself. Social media algorithms are not neutral. They are designed to promote engagement. And what drives engagement more than anything? Emotion. And what's the most potent and easily triggered emotion? Outrage. A calm, reasoned comment like, well, it seems like the parent was probably right there, but I personally wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, does not get the same traction as, this is child endangerment. The algorithm sees the passionate, all-caps comments generating lots of replies and shares, and it shows the post to more and more people, feeding the fire. The platform itself, therefore, is an active participant in amplifying the controversy. Now, imagine being Liz Johnston in the middle of this. You wake up, post what you think is an adorable picture of your child, and within hours, your notifications are a torrent of hateful messages and accusations that you are a danger to your own baby. The psychological toll must be immense. This is her child, whom she loves and cares for, and thousands of strangers are now questioning her fundamental fitness as a mother. It's a form of digital violence, a pylon that can have real-world consequences for mental health. So, where does this leave us? How do we navigate this world as consumers of content and as potential commentators? First, we must reintroduce context and charity into our interpretations. The principle of charity in philosophy suggests that we should interpret other people's statements in the most rational way possible and assume they are not being malicious or stupid. When we see a photo like Liz's, instead of immediately jumping to the worst-case scenario, we could think, I bet the parent was right there. This was probably a quick, supervised moment. We can choose to extend grace. Second, we can engage in personal risk assessment without projecting it onto others. You might look at that photo and think, too risky for my taste. And that is a perfectly valid personal decision. Parenting is full of these judgment calls: co-sleeping versus crib sleeping, baby-led weaning versus purees, front-facing versus rear-facing car seats for longer. The key is to understand that a different choice is not necessarily a wrong choice. It is a choice made by a different parent, with a different child, in a different context, with a different risk calculus. Third, we should be mindful of the power of our words. Typing an angry comment takes 2 seconds, but receiving thousands of them can be devastating. Before hitting send, it's worth asking, is this comment helpful? Is it necessary? Is it based on a full understanding of the situation? Or am I just adding to a chorus of negativity that does nothing to improve the life of that child? Finally, for the parents and content creators out there, this is a stark reminder of the landscape. The price of sharing your life online is, tragically, opening yourself up to this kind of scrutiny. It requires a thick skin and a strong support system. It also might require a more conscious choice about what to share and what to keep private, not out of fear, but as a protective measure for your own peace and for your child's digital autonomy later in life. In the end, the Great Pumpkin debate of this past Halloween is a microcosm of a much larger cultural moment. It's about parenting in a fishbowl. It's about the erosion of trust in individual parental judgment. It's about the performance of virtue in the digital town square. And it's about our strange relationship with risk, where we fear a pumpkin more than we fear the profound isolation and anxiety that this culture of judgment creates for parents. The photo of baby Leighton in the pumpkin was meant to be a snapshot of a sweet, fleeting moment of infancy. Instead, it became a Rorschach test for our collective anxieties about safety, judgment, and what it means to be a good parent in the 21st century. The pumpkin itself was neutral. It was just a vegetable. The meaning, the danger, the outrage, and the defense, we projected all of that onto it. We would do well to remember that the next time we feel the urge to cast a stone from our glass houses, while our own children, perhaps, are engaging in some other activity that another parent, somewhere, would find utterly terrifying. The debate isn't really about the pumpkin. It's about us. And that is a conversation worth having, with a lot more nuance and a lot less vitriol. Thank you for joining me for this deep dive. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but let's keep it civil, shall we? Let's be the change. I'm Olivia, and I'll see you next time.